Hello, everybody. Drasco here from 10knorm.com, where my main focus is to help guide heart-centered entrepreneurs under 10K months to transcend the blind spots that are keeping them from thinking, feeling, acting, and authentically marketing so they can normalize their own versions of 10K months. And today's episode, we have another Real Talk segment where I bring a heart-centered entrepreneur on their way towards their 10K norm. And we have some real talk about what's currently their biggest challenge towards their 10K norm. And in that conversation, we're going to explore who they are, why they do what they do. And then live on the call, I get to help them get out of their own way for a challenge that they're currently experiencing towards their 10K norm. And for today's guest, we have Rick Ornelas, who is an author, professional coach, and also the founder of iSpark Change, where he teaches men and women to unlock their amazing potential to create an incredible future and basically change the world around them. And if that wasn't enough, he's also the author of 12 Hours of Heaven, which includes a lot of lessons for a better world, in addition to being featured across a wide variety of media outlets that you would recognize. But I will leave that for Rick to actually break down properly. So Rick, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Drasco. It's a pleasure to be on, and I think we're going to have a really cool conversation.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into, what you do. And, that was kind of a general breakdown from some of the stuff that I've seen, just kind of looking and preparing before this call. So why don't you kind of tell the people, a little bit more with regards to what you do and who you do it for and all that good stuff.
Sure. What I basically do is I coach others in a number of different ways. This really has been, I've been doing throughout my career, probably for the last 25 plus years. I've been coaching others in different ways. More recently, since 2015, I've had my own coaching company for businesses, specifically for doctors, strategic medical coaching. And in that business, I coach doctors on the leadership and teach them the leadership and business skills necessary to have successful practices in the modern business environment. And that's something that I still do. I still have clients and work with the different types of doctors, chiropractors, MDs, psychologists, all different types. And I've had that business since, for the past 6 years, and it's very rewarding, and I do enjoy it. And then things kind of shifted for me last year. So just over a year ago, when the world shut down and everybody was having to adjust their business and change things. Well, what happened with my business is it slowed down a lot. A lot of my clients, they either closed or they had to put their services on hold because their revenue had decreased substantially. So I found myself with a bunch of time in March, April of last year. And, at first it was kind of an anxious time for me because I'm used to being very busy. I mean, I stay very active and, my days are full. And having all this time on my hands, it was really uncomfortable. So I decided to start writing. And I wrote a blog about using COVID as an opportunity. And then from there, I decided to write a book that had been in my head for 20 years. And I finally decided to write it. So I wrote my book, 12 Hours of Heaven, Lessons for a Better World. And I started that in about mid-April, and then I finished that in July, and it was published in October. But in the time that I was writing, I went through this incredible period of a spiritual awakening and creativity and this just constant flow of creative ideas. And it was during that time that I created a second company, iSpark Change, which you mentioned in the intro. And iSpark Change, our mission is to inspire and connect those that want to spread positive change around the world. So whether it's through their individual action or through the actions of their organization or their company, but it's all about connecting and inspiring those individuals. And so since then, which was about fall of last year when I created that company, I've been kind of juggling both and doing strategic medical coaching on one side and then working on iSpark Change on the other side, and then trying to throw some writing and stuff in there, mixing all that. And it's just been, kind of a juggling act. So when you ask explain who you are, I mean, it's really I wear a lot of hats. It just kind of depends on the day or the time of day, really.
Right. It's kind of one of those like, what do you do? And it's like, well, about what? Right. Like there's so
Yeah,
many different things I actually end up doing. So I totally get it.
yeah,
And I love that because I think, what makes us good as coaches, one of the things is having that kind of breadth of experience. Like you can connect to a lot of different people. You can connect to a lot of different instances that, even though maybe you not don't have the exact lived experience of somebody that you're coaching, you can relate it to something that you went through in another field or area. So I love that fact. And I think it's one of the qualities that actually makes for good coaches. So I'm not surprised that that's the case. And what I would love to know more about, because I was just kind of browsing through your website before this call and the book that you said, because like it was living in me for 20 plus years. What I found cool when I was reading the description of it, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's about so I know it's like there's an elevator that gets stuck for 12 hours, and then
right.
all of these things kind of surface out of what happens in those 12 hours. You want to dive into those and kind of the lessons that clearly have been percolating for 20 plus years.
Yes, yes, sure. So the book is actually, it's a fictional story. And the fictional story was born out of a real life event. So before I explain the book, I'll just kind of explain that event real quick, because that's where it really starts. Is 20 years ago, I was living in California at the time. Now we live in Texas, but living in California at the time, driving down the highway on the way home from a birthday party with my wife and my two daughters, who were young at the time. They were 1 and 4 at the time. Now I have 3 daughters and they're all grown, right? But I had two at that time. They're very young. We were coming back from a little kid's birthday party, and we have about a 2 hour drive, and it starts pouring rain. Like it doesn't typically rain in Southern California, and the freeway's really slick, and we're going very slow, trying to drive very cautious. And we see cars that had pulled off the road because it was raining that hard. And we contemplate stopping, but it's getting dark, and my wife, soon, and my wife was like, "Oh, this can be worse if it gets dark, so we need to continue on." And it was late. It was a Sunday night, and so as we're cruising along, I'm driving in the slow lane, just very cautiously, and then I lose control of the vehicle. We start hydroplaning, and we start spinning out of control, and we go across 3 lanes, 3 more lanes into the center divider, and we're about to hit the center divider, and I'm trying to steer, and we end up going back the other direction, and we start spinning the other way, completely out of control, and we spin back across all 4 lanes, and we go off the shoulder, up a dirt embankment, and we hit a brick wall, and we completely flip over, and we land back on the wheels. And the roof was smushed down to our heads, and the windshield was shattered, and the right side glass was all shattered, and that side was all smashed in. And I checked my daughters and my wife, and we're all completely unharmed. We don't have a scratch on us. And my daughters had been asleep, and they woke up and they're crying, but they're fine. And we managed to crawl out of my side, and my wife is sitting on the side of the road, and a car had stopped, and they gave her a blanket to wrap around her and the kids, and she's holding them and crying. And I'm talking to the gentleman. This older couple had stopped. I'm talking to the gentleman, and he's like, "That's the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. I thought for sure that you were going to be dead, or that they had called 911 because they thought we were dead or severely injured." And as I reflected on that accident and felt that it was, people are like, "Oh, that's a miracle, it's a miracle." And as I reflected on it, my mom would tell me, "Oh, your guardian angel protected you, and that's why you were okay." And she gave me this little angel pin to put in my car that I stuck on my visor of my car, my next car, because that one was totaled. And as I was driving one day, I went through a period of reflection, a lot of reflection soon after that accident, because of what had happened. And like my kids were afraid to go in the car, and there's lots of things, and my wife wouldn't drive in the rain. There's all these things that were happening, and so as I was reflecting, because I had to drive for work, I had to be out in the car, and I'm sitting there looking at that angel pin, and one day, and then the story for my book, it hit me in my head like a movie, like just like I had just watched the movie, and I'd seen the whole story. And so I was like, wow, this is pretty interesting. I need to write this. So I wrote like a page, Word document, like one page. And then I never finished, never did anything with it. It got lost on some old computer, who knows what happened to it, until last year when I wrote the blog about using the time as an opportunity. And then I said, you know what? I need to write that story. This is the perfect time to write that story because I have the gift of time, which I had, like I said, I'm busy. I always stay busy and active. And so I was like, now I have all this time. And as I wrote the story, and that flood of ideas came, I was, I felt as I was just being given the story. It was just kind of pouring out of me. I was just typing and the story just flowed out of me. But the story, yes, it is about folks that get trapped in an elevator. But the interesting part is that it's about an angel who's sent down from heaven, and he gets trapped in the elevator with these 10 individuals, and they're trapped for 12 hours, as you said. And during that 12 hours, he's able to help each one of them with the biggest challenge of their life. And he teaches them a lesson. And so the subtitle is Lessons for a Better World. And the things that he teaches them are, he teaches one character gratitude, and he teaches another character to be present in their life, and someone else to have faith, and someone else to serve others, and someone else to give. And so these are not unique lessons to my book, right? These are things that have been around for thousands of years and taught many places, right? Starting with scripture and then many places beyond that. But I felt I was given a very creative format to put these lessons that has really resonated with people, because as I was writing, the world was going through a bad time. And there was all these events of last year, right? There was the pandemic, and then there was, racial tension, and there was, all sorts of other political things, and all these things were going on. And I was like, man, the world is just getting like, we're in some really tough times. And I was like, I need to help get people like motivated in the right direction, right? And inspire people. And that's what I felt I was doing with my writing. And that's why I sparked change. So it's a long answer to your question, but it all fits into why.
Listen, those are always the best answers. So I appreciate the long answer, and I just have to kind of reflect back as like one of the things that I was thinking of the whole time. So I'll reflect back two things right off the bat. So number one is when I initially read about your book and just a little bit of conversation we had prior to the recording, I was like that's such like a perfect thing to be created into a movie, right? Or like a 12 episode series where it's like each episode is like one lesson or dialogue, or however it is with the character, right? And you had mentioned it was the whole thing downloaded to you as a movie. So I just thought that was kind of cool how that synchronicity happened, and the divine timing across the board of this accident that was a miracle in of itself. Like you said, it was almost even impossible that you guys got unscathed, and how that birthed this book. And it got written at the time where metaphorically the world was stuck in an elevator, right? For a year we had
Yeah.
kind of that time to like be introspective about these lessons. So I think that's very cool how all of that lined up. So is that something that's been true for you as you look back through the last year?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Drasco. I definitely agree with the divine timing, as you're saying. I could have written the book 20 years ago, but maybe it wasn't needed, or maybe it wouldn't have inspired people, or maybe no one would have read it. I don't know. And, or it wouldn't have been the story that came out of me at the time it came out, because of where I am in life and my experiences, and 20 years later and where the world was. And you're the first person to ever, as you said, metaphorically put it that way, that the world was in an elevator, trapped. Essentially, I love that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that to share that with others. I'll give you credit though. But yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. I had really thought that, okay, we're in some challenging times, and then the times had been going on even since before COVID. Things had been for the past few years, it seemed like there's just a lot of things that pop up here and there and this, and you always look at the news. It's like another thing and another thing and another thing. It's like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And but you're absolutely right. It is the timing is just incredible, and and hopefully for others is that as we're moving out of pandemic and everything, that people are moving into a better place, into a better world.
100%. And so what I would be curious to kind of bounce off of that is, I guess what was also birthed during the last year was this community of iSpark Change, right? Because you said that was kind of the second project that you were doing in addition to the medical coaching. So yeah. Can you tell us a bit more about that and what that's about, how it works, etc.?
So iSpark Change, as I was saying, it's about connecting individuals and inspiring them that want to spread positive change. And that can take many forms and many fashions. So when I first created it, it was, hey, let's have a community, let's have an online community where people can share things that they're doing, where people can help inspire others. My team, we're daily posting, inspirational quotes and motivational things and different things to show people some positivity, because we're constantly bombarded by the negativity with the news and the media and everything and social media. So there's that aspect of it. But in a bigger aspect where iSpark Change is starting to evolve is that since I created it, we started that way. And then in the past few months, I've started to do some group coaching programs for, like, we had a challenge for Generation Z that was called Level Up Your Life that we just finished a few weeks ago. It was a 3-day challenge, because Generation Z, they need something quick. So it was a 3-day challenge, just 1 hour per day, to help them gain control of their emotions and their relationships. And we talked about those areas because they've been hit the hardest, honestly, and statistically speaking, in the past year, with isolation, anxiety, depression, all these things. And I kept getting these signs like, oh, you need to work with young people, you need to help young people, you need to help young people. So we've had a lot of focus on, Gen Z and providing them some inspiration and some content. And then also with organizations and companies. So we're about to launch a big campaign to help show companies, organizations, groups, other than individuals, but show them about how to have a social impact in their business, how to make, social good and a social movement a part of what they do each and every day. Because one of the great things that was born of the pandemic and, these times that we were just talking about a few minutes ago, one of the great things that's been born of that is that people are now more focused than ever about people. They're now more focused than ever about helping others and serving others. And if you look at advertising, all advertising, it's geared towards, how can we help others, and how can we, it's not like, oh, hey, buy our product. No, it's look, our product is good for the environment, for example, right? And there's a lot of businesses and organizations that frankly, they don't know how to do that. They don't know what that looks like. And so that's what we're about to roll out is showing them how to do that, how to make that a part of their business. Because, and the last thing I'll say to answer is that we see this as being a way to help spread that positivity and implement that positive change faster and on a bigger scale than just like one person at a time and one person at a time and one person at a time. Because I'll work till the day I die, and who knows what kind of impact I'll have. If we can have, bigger impacts through organizations that touch thousands or millions, then that can spread a lot faster.
Got it. So it's like that multiplicative effect, because if I affect the people that, affect a whole bunch of other people, then the whole message ripples a lot further. That's kind of what it sounds like to me, versus doing it on a one-to-one basis.
Exactly. And I think I've used the term ripple effect on every podcast I've been on this year. Is, that's what we want. We want to create a ripple effect that just by any small positive action that it, leads to that ripple effect across, across many layers.
That's amazing. I mean, I love that. I think it's one of the reasons why inherently I also, so just for context, like I used to own a brick and mortar weight loss center that I closed down kind of just before COVID hit. So it's kind of inevitable that was going to happen. And then this year, so 2020 was also a big pivoting year for me that kind of led to what I'm doing right now. But one of the reasons I chose to work with heart center entrepreneurs and focus on coaches is that ripple effect, right? If I can help them achieve their goals, then they can go and affect a lot more people. So it's that multiplicative bit. So I 100% align and agree with that. So my follow-up question then would be, when I listen to you speak about everything that you're doing and everything that you've done and the vast experience that you have throughout the medical coaching and doing the leadership coaching for those individuals, what then is like it just kind of like it just sounds like, okay, everything's moving along nicely. What do you feel like then is the struggle or the obstacle towards your 10K norm?
I think it's a couple things. The first thing is that I'm still in the startup phase for iSpark Change. I mean, it's still very, very early. I mean, I did that challenge, for example, I did that challenge for Gen Z. And the hope was to get, hundreds of people in this challenge. We charged a nominal amount, just basically to cover our costs, like $29 for, these Gen Z folks, just to kind of give them a little something so they put some value behind it. And then we were going to do a longer program, and everything ended up coming, all the marketing, everything ended up where, I lost money essentially, but when you put it all together. And so I basically did it as more of a, social good myself, that's what it ended up being, just because, of, not getting the message across, I guess, to the masses like we wanted to. So some of the struggles of startup, right, you go through to try to get your business out there and known. And then the second part would be like the company aspect of it, the business aspect of it, that we haven't even rolled out yet. That's just something we've been building, creating, developing, revamping the website. You said you were on the website earlier, but we have a whole totally redesigned, much, much better website that will be coming out here in about 30 days, that will help to explain what iSpark Change is about better, help to show more about the importance of social good and having a social impact. And so I think all that is to say is that it's just taking a lot of time. It's taking a lot of time to get there, to get to that 10K norm. It's just taking so much time and resources, and that probably more than I had expected.
Yeah, well, I also feel that because even starting this whole podcast, it was the podcasting part is easy, the talking is easy, but it's the post production that I was thrown in for a loop with regards to how much work there is.
Yeah.
So I feel that from that level as well. And just to then clarify on the pieces that you did reveal now. So with the medical coaching, the strategic medical coaching, that is something that I'm assuming you've already gone through your own 10K norm for that just throughout the 25 years that you've done that. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. And I've had the company on my own since the end of 2015, but all my experience was been in coaching before that, but just on my own since 2015. But I've gone through, the ups and downs of having, those norms, and far more than that and less than that, and, things like that. And that's fairly stable. It's fairly stable. That same thing. That could be, I'd like to have some more things on autopilot with that business, honestly, just because it is time consuming. A lot of the work that I do with, the leadership training, a lot of it is one-on-one. So that is time consuming. And that's why with iSpark Change, I didn't want to have it be the same kind of thing. You know, if I'm going to, as I said, if I'm going to impact millions, you can't do it one-on-one. That's just you. There's not enough of you to do that. That's just, you know, not reasonable. So that's why looking for other avenues to, you know, spread the reach.
Got it. So as far as like your ultimate dream, it's to transition everything towards iSpark, and then that becomes the main thing, and that grows for much bigger impact. Is that accurate?
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I wouldn't, I mean, I've SMC, it pays the bills. It you know, iSpark Change isn't generating any revenue. I mean, it's paying for those other things. And I just did a challenge through SMC that was fairly well received. But yeah, and I wouldn't abandon my clients or anything like that. And I see there being some synergy, you know, down the road. Like I said, you show where some of those clients, I show them how to add social impact to their business and, you know, make it a part of what they do. So I mean, they can cross over. It's just not ready for that yet.
Got it. Okay. So it's just kind of, there's one thing that's reliable right now, and it's paying the bills, while I reallocate some of those funds towards getting this iSpark off the ground and getting the momentum I need, the direction I need along with
Correct.
that. So that's kind of accurate. Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
so with regards to that, because you do have such extensive experience coaching, if you were coaching yourself, what's kind of the first thing that would pop into your head about coaching yourself in this instance?
good question. Coaching myself, the first thing I would tell myself is to focus on the things that are important. So focus on the things that are going to, you know, move the needle the fastest. And I struggled with that for a lot of months. You know, when I told you this was iSpark Change starting in the fall, so I struggled with that for, you know, probably all the end of last year and the beginning of last year. And, you know, it wasn't until more recently that I, you know, in the past couple, 2-3 months that I was like, okay, you need to reallocate, you know, your time and focus on what's going to have the most impact. And so that's what I have been doing lately. But that's the biggest coaching, you know, the biggest lesson for me
Is to focus on what's important.
Yes, what's most important and what will have the biggest, you know, bang for the buck, so to speak.
Got it.
With,
Again,
you know,
goes
what I'm
back to
doing.
the multiplicative idea, right? Like if I
Yeah.
do this one thing, it'll have the appropriate ripple effects.
Yes.
Because it seems like right now, a big limiter in what you're doing is you have the reliable piece, which is one-on-one. So you have to do like, you know, give it its due course because you care about your clients. You want to make sure that you deliver on what you promised. But it does require a lot of resources. So then I have even less limited, like I have more limited resources rather on the iSpark bit. So everything I do needs to be the right lever so that it has the effects that I want. Like, is that accurate?
Yes. Yes, that's accurate. Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
perfect. So then, because you said you've been focusing on this for the last bit of last year, going into this year with regards to like figuring out what's important, what criteria has come up for that?
What do you mean by criteria?
Well, because you're like, I got to focus. Like, if I was coaching myself, then
Mhm.
I would coach myself to focus on what's important. So, what have you identified as these are the important things I need to work on? And then subsequently, what's the
Oh,
criteria
gotcha.
you use to decide this is what was important?
Yes, yes, gotcha. So the things I'm focusing primarily on are finding new clients. So done some things to find new clients on both sides. Creating some new programs. So I created a whole new leadership program for, well, it really can work for both sides, but mainly for SMC. But I created a whole new leadership training program. And so those are the two biggest ones. It's about finding clients, and then it's about creating new programs. Like I created the whole program for feeling that I could work with Generation Z, created the whole, you know, that all that content, you know, that whole program for Level Up Your Life. and everything. So it's about those two things, about finding and then, creating the content, the resources, the programs to support it, support those clients.
Got it. Okay. So I was writing down a few notes. I just want to clarify a few things. So you said one of the important things was finding new clients on both sides, right? So the strategic medical coaching and for iSpark. Is that
Yep.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
And on the iSpark side, were those clients the ones that went into the group programming, or they were something else?
The ones that went into the group programming. Yes.
Okay. So that's the one-on-ones and then the group. Okay. And then because you attracted the Gen Z, so like the younger generation, then you also had to deliver something to them and then subsequently create the program
Mm-hmm.
for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So that's kind of the main thing that's been going on for the last, how long? 6 months, 8 months? Is that?
Yeah, probably less than 6, 5 months, 4 or 5 months, something like that.
Okay. So basically, let's just say this first half of 2021.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. So in that, because my original question was what was important and kind of what was your criteria. So you kind of listed what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a process where you went through like, okay, what is it that's actually important and why, or that just kind of came out organically?
No, I did discuss, like I have my former business partner. I mean, he's still my business partner on SMC, but he doesn't do much in the business anymore. But we discussed what are really the most important things with regards to SMC. And then I went through that evaluation process with myself to just, okay, let's look at everything I'm doing. What are the things that are just sucking my time, but aren't having a big impact? Stuff like that. And then eliminating some of those. So I guess the process would be, going through the evaluation and then saying, okay, I'm just going to eliminate some of these because they're not having a, huge impact right now, or they're just spending too much time.
Got it. And those are things you've already gone through or you intend to go through again?
When you mean go through, you mean go through to assess whether they're important, or I might bring them back later?
Well, technically both, right? Like if
Maybe
they're
both.
important,
Okay.
then I'm assuming you're gonna bring
Yeah.
them back.
I went through the analysis, say, okay, this is something I'm not going to do right now. And then, yeah, potentially there are some that I may bring back later. So I'll give you an example. So one of them was, I was spending a lot of time reaching out, as you said in the beginning, been in various media outlets and had different, TV segments and things. So I was spending a lot of time on a weekly basis getting in touch with these, producers and pitching and submitting for different writing things and all that. And I was like, okay, I need to, that just takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time for a very small reward. And so I just completely eliminated that. I mean, I still will, like yesterday I had an author that wanted some quotes for a book, and they wanted to use some of my material. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's fine. You can use that for your book. And that's great. But it did take a lot of time on my part. It was just a couple emails back and forth, and then, yeah, sure. But I'm not actively going out and, seeking those things like I was at the beginning of the year.
Got it. There's a lot of effort that went into just, okay, let me get this exposure because with the exposure, it'll lead to somewhere like that I want to go.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
perfect. So in that regard, so where is it that you want to go right now?
For my businesses, where I want to go is I want to have, my consistent clients with SMC that are, more streamlined, that they take less of my time. I have a new client that's been just for the past few months that I had them on that streamline, that new program I created. It's a lot easier to manage. And then, for example, I have a client that I've had for the past few years that they're on an older program. It just takes more time. I was working all morning on stuff for them, very time consuming. And so, having them all in this, more of a clients that are on this streamline, very easy to manage on that side. And then the iSpark Change side it would be to have a regular slew of leads that come in that are businesses that are interested in having a social impact and learning what that looks like. People that are reaching out to me to say, hey, we want you to create a program for us in our business and teach us what to do, and then having the resources to make that happen.
And what would those resources potentially be?
So the resources would be a few different things. It could be either speaking, so coming in, doing a presentation, and you teach them at a one-time thing where you're saying, hey, this is what you can do, and then also a more of a cookie cutter solution that, hey, this is which I haven't created all yet completely, but here's what you can do for your business and we have some of the framework for that. I mean, I have the basic framework, but I don't have the finite detail on what that's going to look like. But this is the solution. So, I could say, hey, Dresco, for your business, we're going to come in and you do this, ABC, XYZ, and that, then you have a social movement, you have social impact behind your business. And then maybe we do some consulting over, lesser time, consulting over a longer period of time until that's up and running. And then they're off on their own and they're happy and they tell someone else about me, right? And then, I go in and help some other business that they know.
Got it. So it's about having on that side, basically having two different offerings, right? So like one is my like standard speaking one time, and then the other one's kind of a preset program, potentially with some upsells for additional coaching or my involvement in that.
Yes.
So those things are not existing right now. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's framework of those things, but not the detail, that I could like roll it out tomorrow with someone.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know what I would do in general and I have outlines and all that, but not where it's like, hey, let me just go in and drop it in.
So really speaking, if somebody gave you the money for a contract, something that would be pushed to get done because like you have it in your head. It's just
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly.
got it. Okay.
Yeah, if someone's like, hey, I want you to do this in the next 2 weeks, I'd be like, oh, I'd get that done.
Got it. Yeah. So that kind of, external pressure to get that done for this reason would make that happen, but it's all already lined up in your head.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. With myself and my, my marketing colleague, we have that all figured out.
Got it. Okay. So in that case, when it comes to these two things, because you have like the one where I have to maintain it, which is the medical coaching, and then the other one that I have to build, what is the resource you need more right now? Do you need more time or do you need more money to make those two happen?
Ooh, that's a tough question because it's probably like 50-50, honestly. I would have said a few months ago that I needed more finances to get that going for iSpark Change, right? But now that, like I just said, I have some of these things in my head, I need to create them. If I was forced to your point, then I would make the time and create them. It's probably a little of both, honestly. And it's tough to say which is which, but
got it. So there's no clear like, okay, I need this to breathe kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And right now, which one does take up more time?
In terms of the businesses or in terms of the...
So you have, if I look at yourself cumulatively, as far as like, these are the resources I have with the constraints of like, I'm going to spend X amount of time with family and like, I don't want to, make this my whole life or whatever. Given those resources, as far as your time, your energy, your inclination to do them, which business takes up more of your resources right now?
Oh, it's probably pretty equal. So even though SMC is bringing in the revenue, I'm probably spending about 50% of my time on iSpark Change to build all that, even though it's not bringing in the revenue. Yeah, it's probably pretty close, 50-50 or 60-40. I mean, it's pretty close.
Got it. So it's like 50% of my time and resources is spent on, and it's SMC, right? So I'm saying
SMC, yeah, strategic medical coaching.
okay, makes sense. So 50% of my time is spent on SMC, which brings in, 90% of the revenue. That's
Yes.
accurate. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
have iSpark, which I spend 50% of my time, but right now is bringing in 5 to 10% of the revenue.
Correct.
And on that one, if I were to have that bring in more revenue, suddenly I would reallocate a lot of the time that I'm spending there towards actually fulfilling that revenue.
Yeah, true. True.
Okay, perfect. So as I reflect that back to you, like, is anything popping out for you or no?
I mean, I always am looking at my time on ways to better allocate my time. I was just listening to a little podcasting this morning about time and the value of your time and how much, things actually cost, in time wise, right? When you spend doing X or Y or Z, how much that really costs. And so I'm always looking at that, and I always feel that I can do a better job of, allocating my time. But like I wake up at 4:30 every morning, and I work till like 7 p.m. at night. So I, after I go work out and all that and come back, then I work long days. So I do put in a lot of time, but it's just a matter of, am I spending my time on the most important things?
Got it. Okay. So yeah, so that's making a lot more sense. And that's kind of what was coming out for me as I was asking these questions. And I think the most relevant kind of concept here is one thing that I've learned from so a mentor of mine, which is Nick Peterson, which I'd highly recommend everybody check out. But he has this idea of more versus closer. So right now, you are very good at covering a lot of distance. So I work from early morning to the evening. I do a lot. I got a lot of exposure with regards to everything. I wrote this book. I'm focused on creating these programs. I launched this thing for not a lot of like money. Like as far as iSpark is concerned, you do a lot. You cover a lot of distance, right? But then is that actually getting you closer to what you want? Which, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, to me sounded like I would like that to begin to make more revenue as opposed to I got to siphon from one into the other. So number one, is that
Mhm.
accurate?
Yes. Yeah, that's accurate for sure.
Okay, perfect. And then there's the other side where, it's driving same amount of time, 50-50, but driving 90% of the revenue needs to be in place. Otherwise, then you run into a real problem.
Mhm.
But that part also, right? I kind of juggle a lot of different things because I have these old systems that while they bring in the revenue, I haven't actually changed them to reflect the resource allocation that I need right now. So would that part be accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate too. Yeah,
Okay.
good capture.
So in that case, to me, really what's coming out is there is a big gap between the doing and the clarity on what closer actually is to you, right? Because
Mhm.
left alone, our default will be to default for more, right? I need more hours, I need more output, I need more exposure, I need to talk to more people, I have to get onto more, like more is always the end.
Mhm. Mhm.
But more like just causes us to win a game we might not have wanted to play to begin with,
Mhm.
right? Because to me, there's not really a defined closer, and why I say that, as far as on the iSpark side, is because as soon as I asked you, okay, so if you got a contract right now, 2 weeks, the program would be done. So then why spend all this time getting exposure and creating the program, working out the details when the limiting factor is I actually don't have the client to deliver this to?
Yeah, true. True.
Okay, so in that case, how would you define closer for both businesses actually?
Hmm. That's an excellent question. Um, I would say I define closer for, well, let's take SMC first. So closer for SMC would be, um, I would say taking the clients that I have now and making sure that they're as streamlined and, they're, like I said, updated programs so that it's takes a lot less of my time, that I'm, allocating the right amount of time there for the right amount of reward.
Okay, so just pause right there. So the question was, what's closer? And you defined, or you answered with an action plan.
Okay.
Okay. So let's take again one, and I'm not saying that's the wrong action plan. It's just
Yeah.
more what I'm trying to get at is the right action plan for the wrong goal doesn't get you where you want to go. Right. So
Yeah.
again, what would then be closer for SMC?
And so I may not clearly understand what I'm looking for when you say closer.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So what I say is like right now you are where you're at and there's somewhere where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So everything that moves you closer to where you want to go is a worthwhile action to take. But if we don't know where you want to go, then it's like going to Google Maps and being like, "Hey, can you like take me somewhere?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, well, like then you just cover a lot of distance, but you don't actually go anywhere.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
So less metaphorical, given where you're at right now, where do you want to go and why with SMC?
Gotcha. Okay. So where I want to go with SMC is I want it to be, well, I think I kind of answered that earlier when we weren't necessarily defining it as closer, but I want it to be more streamlined, more autopilot, where it takes very little of my time, where the clients are still getting served, but but I'm not having to, put a lot of effort into serving them.
Awesome. That actually absolutely makes sense. So in that case, if I'm spending 50% of time right now doing the SMC stuff, and that's actually generating my lifeline, and I'm spending 50% of time with iSpark, and that's not really generating me much of the things that move me forward, would it make sense in the short term to reallocate some of that secondary 50% back into SMC so that you can make everything as streamlined as possible so that that does run on autopilot, giving you potentially 70 or 80% of your resources to devote strictly to iSpark?
Yeah, it would make sense. I'm not sure how to do it, but it would make sense. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not sure of the quickest path there, but
Okay, perfect. But now it's like that, you see like the definition now. Like so when once we have defined what like where we're moving towards, right? Then we can begin to make certainty that, okay, I'm going to get there if I keep doing these steps. And the next step is, well, how do I compress that time to actually get there?
mhm,
So given the situation with SMC, like you said, you do a lot of one-on-one work with
mhm,
those individuals.
yes.
Is it out of the question to make that into a group program?
Um, it's not out. So with different clients, it's different. The answer is different with different clients. So with one client, yes, that's the newer client. That's the one where I've said I've made it more streamlined, right? It's more of a group thing. It's more of, hey, it's just, one time per month, a lot easier. Doesn't take a lot of time. With the other one, I have um, just the way what I do for them and what I have, the way I have it set up, it there's really no way to turn it into a group program. So for example, I help them with managing their practice. And right now, when I was talking about this morning, one thing that is part of our original agreement is me helping with hiring because they had horrible turnover. They didn't know what they were doing, so forth. So like this morning, I was conducting phone interviews um, with different potential people to go work for this client. So like that kind of stuff, I can't really put that into a group. I can't put that into a group program. I mean, I could maybe have someone else do that, right? Hire a BA or have someone do those screenings and, try to cut my time there, but then I have that extra cost. You know what I mean? There's not really a simple answer to that question.
And that's totally fair, because I
Yeah.
wasn't aware that there was implementation as part of your delivery for
Yes.
coaching, right? Because
Yeah. And that's why I shifted away from that, because I was
yeah,
like, this takes way too much time. And that's why I don't do that with any other clients. It was just that one older client, which, I do feel a lot of loyalty to them because they're the only one that stuck with me, 100% through COVID. They didn't cancel anything. They didn't want to cut anything back. They didn't do everything. And I helped them, grow 40% last year. We supported each other.
absolutely. Yeah. And you want to
Yeah.
honor a relationship like that,
Yeah.
200%. So I
Yeah.
understand that. I guess what I would just reflect back to, without going, too deep into like the actual business mechanics as far as like on, this show or whatever. Um, if who you deal with is medical professionals, they tend to have very similar needs, like whether they're at, a chiropractic office or they're a medical office or they're a naturopath office, like everybody is going to struggle with hiring, onboarding, and training their staff to be
Exactly.
compliant, to know the right procedures, to honor the brand. Like these are universal things.
Correct.
So from my vantage point, and actually having been in programs where stuff like that was covered in a group setting, I think there's potentially a lot on the table as far as, going into it and like investigating the question of what if I did combine it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Still leave some room for the one-on-ones, because that is what they signed up for. This could always be an add-on. That community bit could actually give them more than the simple one-on-one attention. So I don't know how that lands for you, but I'd love to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that does make sense, and it's interesting you say that, because I have been thinking about, hey, I really need to have a conversation with them about, you know, modifying how we work together and everything, just because of the time component.
Yeah, 100%. I think on us as coaches, oftentimes that manifests as our own discomfort of setting certain boundaries, ruffling certain feathers. Just, am I going back on my word with regards to what it is I delivered? I think that's where the onus is on us to then begin to modify, like, I have to honor my goals without ever discrediting or, making worse yours. How can we find that middle ground, right? Because to
Yes.
me, that's, from everything that you shared, it's like, okay, we need this to work. You want it to work. You want to honor your clients. But right now, it seems very unsustainable as far as I'm juggling two things, covering a lot of distance, but very
Mm-hmm.
rarely am I actually moving forward. So if my closer is defined as, okay, so I need to be able to deliver everything I need for this business in under X amount of hours a week, then the decision criteria for what I have to do every day is bounced back to that. Like, is everything I
Gotcha.
choose to do aligned with that particular piece? So how
Yeah,
does,
that makes a lot of sense.
okay, perfect. So does that kind of give you clarity as far as like, okay, what are my important steps going forward?
Yes, it definitely does, because now that I have a better understanding of closer, what
Sure.
what
And that,
closer what closer is, then it gives me a better understanding of what I need to do. Not necessarily the action steps, but just the shorter path, as you said.
yeah, because the action steps could be varied and they'll look different for each individual, but I think it's the important bit. And I think you could apply the same thing to iSpark as well, right? Like, what is it that would actually move that needle forward? So is that something you're open to just kind of discussing right now, just to kind of close that loop?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, we can discuss that.
Okay. So what I heard when we were diving into that piece was like, I've been doing a lot, but it hasn't actually moved a needle forward as far as, okay, this is what's necessary to make those necessary ripple effects. So
Mhm.
how would you define where you want to go with regards to iSpark?
Um, define my closer or where I want to be.
So in turn, we define both, right? Like if you know where you want to be, we have an idea of where you are right now. We can define what starts to move you closer towards it.
I see. So where I want to be is I want to have, and I think I kind of answered that already, but I want to have the um, business program in place where I have it's more of a a turnkey solution that I can provide for a business or an organization, and they can implement it. There's minimal implementation. Maybe there's a presentation on my part, but there's minimal implementation on my part. It's something that I can provide them, and they can, roll out into their business, and it starts having an impact for them and for their clientele, and that I have a system in place where there's either marketing or a referral system or something where there's clients that are regularly coming without having to spend a lot of time searching for them.
Got it. Okay. So kind of longer term, there would be, referrals in place because, I'm over delivering. Midterm, it's kind of like I have to have the program complete so that I'm delivering this thing that's going to over deliver. And then short term, I got to get the program done.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So what if short term you spend the next 2 months creating the best program, and then you get your first client and it ends up being the wrong program for them and you have to recreate certain things?
I mean, I guess that there is potential. I would, as far as we've put a lot of thought and training into what we're creating, and my partner, the marketing folks that I'm working with, I mean, they have done similar things with businesses, and so they've proven that it works, and it does have an impact. So we're just kind of slightly modifying things for the needs of iSpark Change. So I don't really see that happening. I think if we choose the people that, because right now we're going through the process of choosing individuals that we're essentially going to implement it for them for free, right? So that we have them as a test model, and we've chosen very carefully. So if we know who that ideal client is, then I don't see how it would be, that would happen, that it would be incorrect.
Got it. So you have organizations that have done like that you want to work with, and those are going to be your test like
Yes.
pilots for actually
Yes.
creating the program.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, in that case, that makes a lot more sense, given that information. I guess what I was just getting at was like, if your limited resources right now are your capacity, then let's allocate the resources like we talked about towards SMC, get that reliable so I don't have to spend as much time on it. And then the thing that I really need, if it's a revenue generation on the iSpark side, then does it make sense to pre-sell before the thing is complete and I'm spending 2 months completing it, or I could spend 2 months closing a deal?
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying. I
So
think, yeah.
no, it's okay. Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, that's okay. I mean, I don't think it was something that needed to be answered actually, but
That's fair. So yeah, anyway, that's just kind of what I'm throwing your way. But I know this is a much bigger pie to kind of handle than just like one bit like this. But as far as today, like, is this something that you feel complete with?
oh yeah, I mean, you definitely helped to give me some clarity with regards to, where I am and where I need to be, and figuring out that closer and everything. Yeah,
Awesome.
for
Well,
sure.
I'm happy to be able to provide that for you. So then just to kind of close everything off, if you want to tell everybody, where they can find you, where they can contact you, the floor is yours.
Sure. And thank you for the opportunity to do that. The best place is at isparkchange.com. So it's just the letter I and then sparkchange.com. And there they will find information on 12 Hours of Heaven, information on joining our community. We're iSpark Change on every social media platform. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can find iSpark Change. They're all at, it's just all at iSpark Change. So that's really easy there. And I would say anyone that is looking for, some inspiration, some positivity, if they go and join iSpark Change, they get a free download of 25 creative ways to spread positive change in the world that anybody can do. They're all unique and but simple. So I think the world needs more of that right now. But yeah, we'd love folks to join our community. And then we really like when we have people that join the community that, as a result of something like this, right? They either saw a podcast or they came across, a post or something like that, because, that shows that we're having that ripple effect like we talked about earlier.
Awesome. Love it. Spreading positivity is definitely something we need more of. So I can totally get behind that. So thank you very much for being on. And yeah, we'll leave all of those links in the show notes. So yeah, go check out all that good stuff, and we'll see everybody on the next one.